Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Dreamworks Switch to Life. And for today's video, we are going to be reviewing the second film in the Kung Fu Panda franchise in preparation for the upcoming Kung Fu Panda 4. And I gotta say, out of the original trilogy, this is my favorite. It also happens to be probably one of, if not the darkest film DreamWorks has ever made, and I just love that. When this movie first came out and I saw it in theaters, I actually didn't like it. I thought it was too dark, but I was a kid and couldn't really appreciate the story this film was trying to tell. As I've gotten older, I realized that this story was perfect. There was nothing wrong with this movie. It was amazing and phenomenal, and I love what they did with the sequel. And the fact that they made it just 3 years after the first film came out means that they really tried to plan this franchise out from the get-go. And then there's the animation, which I just loved. There's the opening sequences with the shadow puppetry being used instead of, traditional animation. But there's also the whole 3D aspect of the film, the main part, and that was actually really good and amazing, and I loved it because it was better than what they did with the first film. The first film had really great animation. This just upped the factor even more, and I loved that. And the music for this film, it was amazing. It was so good, and I loved it. And now for the voice acting. It was great all across the board. I just loved it, and I loved Gary Oldman's portrayal of the villain Shen. Speaking of, Shen is another statement of how DreamWorks Animation can deliver great villains. But of course, now it's time to dive into the story, which was really great and amazing, and as I've said before, probably the darkest thing that DreamWorks has ever told, and it's really cool what they've done here. So the story begins like this. Shen was a peacock and meant to be the next ruler in Gongmen City, but unfortunately he discovered a dark power in fireworks, and fearing what they would do with it, his parents sought out a soothsayer who said that if Shen continued down this evil path, he would be defeated by a warrior of black and white. Rather than change course, he simply just decided to destroy every single black and white panda, and in the process, that only sealed his fate. Because, as we all know, Po grew up to become the Dragon Warrior, and thus he was destined to save all of China, especially if that meant a threat like Shen was trying to destroy it.
Po, the day you were chosen as Dragon Warrior was the worst day of my life. By far.
However, Po's also facing an inner struggle of trying to figure out who he is, because he needs to master that in order to understand inner peace. Problem is, he can't really know who he is if he doesn't know where he came from, especially once the first battle of the series takes place, and I just loved it. I loved how it was kind of a musical battle, and it was nice, but even better was that it was a payoff from the first movie. If you can recall, the first movie opened up with Po having a dream about being a legendary warrior, taking on an army of wolves and fighting with the Furious Five and hanging out with them. That's all cool. Well, he's starting the movie by hanging out with the Furious Five, then he's fighting an army of wolves, even going so far as to perform the same moves.
Feet of fury!
But anyway, the reason that they're fighting is because the wolves are trying to steal all the metal so that they can make a bunch of weapons for Shen and his army. And the problem is that at one point, Po sees a symbol on one of the wolves' shoulder pads, which ends up causing him to have some memories of his old life back when he was a baby, and he remembers his mother, and unfortunately, this just makes him more confused because he needs to figure out who he is in order to find inner peace. But how can you know who you are when you don't know where you come from? And that's what this movie is trying to tell. So, of course, Po and the Furious Five go on a quest to stop Master Shen, who basically just destroyed one of the most powerful kung fu warriors in Master Thundering Rhino, a character who we come to learn more about in the Secrets of the Master special, and it's really sad to see how much devastation one peacock who doesn't even practice kung fu can cause. It even strikes so much fear into the fellow kung fu warriors that they just decide to stay in prison despite the fact that they are able to escape just like that. And it's really sad to see how crestfallen these kung fu masters actually get. So, Po, Tigress, and the rest of the Furious Five, they fight against Shen, only for Po to realize that Shen knows what happens to his parents, and unfortunately makes the mistake of letting Shen go, which means that now he has to confront Shen about what happened that night, the night that his parents were killed. And so Shen tries to confuse Po by telling him that his parents hated him and abandoned him, but in the end, he ends up revealing the truth that his parents loved him before killing Po. That is, if it weren't for the soothsayer who decided to heal Po and help him focus on his journey of self-discovery, finding out where he comes from, helping him unlock his memories of his past. That being, when Shen decided to attack Panda Village, his father stepped up to protect him, and his mother tried to flee into the woods, but knowing that she couldn't save both herself and Po, she decided to hide Po and use herself as bait, which cost her her life, making her probably one of the greatest moms in Dreamworks history. So she hid Po in a crate of radishes, which were eventually sent to Mr. Ping's noodle shop, where Mr. Ping raised Po to be his own son, and that was probably one of the best things. So Po finally discovers where he comes from, and all the pain and suffering of his old life, he's glad that he knows that, but he also realizes that that's not who he is. It doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is who you choose to be now. And that is exactly what he does in order to unlock inner peace. Once he does that, he's able to stand up against Shen and finally manages to use inner peace as the kung fu technique that is able to stop the thing that stops kung fu. So the villain of this movie, Lord Shen, he just so happens to be one of the best villains that we've ever seen. Not because he's a skilled fighter, but because of his evilness, his brains, his resources and army and weaponry, and it's amazing what he can do. And I just love this guy. He might not be my favorite villain of the Kung Fu Panda franchise, that right sadly goes to Kai, but he's still up there, especially when he goes so far as to kill his own men when they don't follow through with his orders, which was really sad. And even more so was at the very end when he realized that Po learned inner peace, and that meant that Shen couldn't actually hurt him.
I scarred you for life. See, that's the thing, Shen. Scars heal.
But unfortunately, we also have to acknowledge the fact that Po did try to get Shen to understand that he could be redeemed, that he too could learn inner peace. And unfortunately, Shen just doesn't acknowledge that, and he goes so far as to fight Po, and even when he's about to die, he just accepts his fate. But Po and Shen are not the only great characters in this film. We also get a lot of insight on the emotions of the Furious Five, most particularly Tigress, and how much she's actually come to care for Po. Not really in a romantic way, but more like how you would care for a best friend. And that's really amazing to see. It's also great that we see Master Shifu, Master Croc, and Master Ox join the fight at the last minute, which was really great, especially because we saw how devastated Master Ox and Croc were, and even when Shifu was devastated over the fact that Po practically died, there was still a fight in him to the point where he managed to inspire the two people who gave up all hope, and thus we got a really awesome final battle. Now, honestly, I am just gonna say it. This movie was perfect. There was absolutely nothing wrong with this. I have zero nitpicks. Pacing was good. Humor was good. Action was great. The music was great. Voice acting was good. Dark and gritty. That was a great turn for this story, and I loved it. This is honestly my favorite installment in the Kung Fu Panda franchise, but who knows? Maybe Kung Fu Panda 4 will actually be better. Maybe, possibly, probably not. But that's it for today's video, so if you guys enjoyed, make sure that you like and subscribe so you can keep up to date on all things Dreamworks, and please make sure that you are staying safe out there, and I will see you all in my next video. But until then, bye-bye.
Viper! Monkey! Viper! Bunny! What? Oh, sorry.